What is up, River family? It is Wednesday, which means it's our Wednesday Bible study. Here's why we do this. We want to grow together right where we are. So we hope that this encourages you. We hope it inspires you. So let's dive into His Word. I am here with our worship pastor, Braden. Braden, what's up? How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, church. Good. How's it going?
It's good. It's Wednesday, which means it's our Wednesday Bible study. And here's why we do this. We want to grow together right where we are. So if this is your first time joining us, man, we're pumped that you're with us, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or joining us on our podcast a little bit later on in the day. We just want to grow together, right? If we're going to advance and live life on purpose the way that God's called us to do, then we need to get His Word in our life. So if you're joining us, we've been in the book of Mark. Mark's been a really good read. We had different voices come in and speak. It's been a whole lot of fun. So if you got a Bible, open it up to Mark chapter 6. We're only going to cover 6 verses from verse 7 to verse 12. And it reads like this. It says, He summoned the 12 and began to send them out in pairs and gave them authority over unclean spirits. He instructed them to take nothing for the road except a staff, no bread, no traveling bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not put on an extra shirt. He said to them, whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that place. If any place does not welcome you or listen to you, when you leave there, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. And here's the result. They went out and preached that people should repent. Ooh, the R word. And then they drove out many demons, anointed many sick people with oil, and healed them. Braden, what do you see in this when you read this text?
So last week I started reading it, and obviously the first thing that jumps out at you is that He called them and sent them 2 by 2. I love that because, that just provides a buddy system, just like, I like to see me and you as a buddy system.
Yeah.
Even in the church, and it helps because, we feed off of each other. You provide ideas for me, I provide ideas for you, and we can just bounce them off of each other. And then it goes all the way down to, just telling other people what happened. There's 2 accounts. There's less mistakes made that way. And so it just covers in the military, we talked about covering 360 degrees instead of just 180. You can see what's in front and behind you instead of just one direction. And so that's kind of what jumped out at me just to begin with, because just like you talked about last week in Ecclesiastes, 2 is better than 1.
Yeah.
And that was referring more to relationships and love and things like that. But the same concept pertains to this situation as well. And so that's the first thing that jumped out at me.
Let me speak into that, because there's a saying. There's a saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. In that text in Ecclesiastes, it says one can go to battle and be easily overtaken, right? Because he can only cover the 180. Yes. But 2 can stand back to back and conquer. And I think about Ephesians 6 and all of this. Like he's writing, a lot of times we read Ephesians 6, the armor of God, like he's talking to one individual. But he's writing to the church in Ephesus, telling the whole church to put on the armor of God. So what do you call a large group of people preparing for battle? An army, right? The way you win the battle is you win the battle together. So I love this. If you want to go fast, go by yourself, but you can easily be overtaken. If you want to go far, go together, and 2 can stand back to back and conquer.
That's good.
So that next thing, you're about to hop into another idea. Where were you going with that one?
Yeah, he says, and He gave them authority over the unclean spirits. I think a lot of times as Christians, we don't realize the authority that Jesus Christ has given us. And that hit me straight in the mouth, because a lot of times you feel like whatever you're going up against is stronger than you, or is more powerful than you, and it's just not the case. Jesus gave them authority over the unclean spirits. It's all unclean spirits, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. That's enough said to that.
I see the Great Commission in all of this.
Yes.
All right, so if you don't know the Great Commission, it's in Matthew chapter 28, and he says, he actually even starts off by talking authority. In that he says, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So therefore, go and make disciples, right? Baptizing them in my name, teaching them to obey the commands that I've given you, and I'll be with you even till the end of the age. Like, this is the start of that. You know what I mean? He sends out the disciples. Now, what's interesting about this is every miracle, every healing, every demon casted out has been the disciples with Jesus, right?
Yes.
This is the first time that they're getting to see healing, demons casted out, and Jesus not be there, right? That's what it means by he gave them authority, is Jesus gave them the authority to go and do these things. Matthew chapter 10 says, heal the sick, cleanse the leper, you know what I mean? In those, there's a list of things that it mentions right there. And I think, what is the authority that Jesus has given us that we lay down because we think we don't have it?
Yeah.
Or because we actually, not that we don't think we don't have it, we're unaware that we have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think about that, and man, he sends them out and he tells them, listen, if you go to somebody's house and they take you in, Matthew chapter 10 would say, bless them. You know what I mean? If they were good, leave the blessing. If not, remove it. Which is, I'm like, it's kind of tough.
Sorry, guys, I gotta take this.
Yeah,
blessing.
but then there's this verse that really stands out to me is, if any place does not welcome you or listen to you, when you leave it, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at Jewish culture, right, what would happen is this was a very common practice if a Jewish person was to leave a Gentile nation. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Gentile means a non-Jewish person. Basically, if you're watching this and you're not Jewish, you're a Gentile. Welcome. We are Gentiles together. So what would happen is when Jewish people would pass through a Gentile nation, they would shake the dust off their feet. Now, what he's saying here is like, listen, if you go and deliver the message and they don't accept it, shake the dust off your feet.
Yeah.
Now, why is that an exciting thing? Because it's not my responsibility to make somebody say yes.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
It's my responsibility to take the message, right? Paul would say this. He says, we're ambassadors for Christ Jesus. And ambassadors go bearing a message. Well, the message was he made him who knew no sin to become sin so that we might become the righteousness of God, right? If you're an ambassador, it's your job to say that. Hey, so we were sinners, but God so loved us that Jesus came and died in our place. Their response to that is not your responsibility. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He basically, so shaking the dust off was saying like, hey, you're responsible for for the upcoming judgment would ultimately be what that means.
And I like that because so many times I've talked to a lot of pastors and ministers in my life, in my experience, and it is, a lot of guys try to take that experience and that responsibility from that, but that's not ours to take. And that's what I got from this as well, is just our job is to present the gospel.
Yeah.
That's it. That's our job. And so after that, because it's easy to get tied up in what people are saying or thinking, or if they reject you, because it hurts. Emotionally, it hurts. And just as human beings, to not be accepted hurts. And so we just got to keep in mind that Jesus wasn't accepted either.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And so he tells us right here.
His family even called him crazy earlier in this.
Yes.
Did you notice that when he sent them out, he said, hey, don't take anything but a staff, sandals, and one shirt. Like, don't even take a spare shirt. Like, if they were gone for 60 days, they were stinky. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't, the beauty of today is like when we go out, we have all this extra stuff. But imagine the faith that was required for that. Hey, this is going to look a little bit different, guys. I'm going to send you guys out. You guys are going to go out in pairs. It's going to be awesome, right? And here's what's going to happen. I don't want you to take any food. I don't want you to take any money. You can take a sandals, a staff, and the shirt that you're wearing. Don't even take an extra shirt. Like, why would Jesus do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think this is what I think. I think he was going to show them that no matter what, God was going to provide for them. Mm-hmm. Every place that they went to, God was going to show up. God was going to provide. That's why we named the podcast. Like, he sent them out with nothing. Yeah, because if God's name is Jehovah Jireh, it doesn't matter what your circumstances is. His character defines his name, right? We named God based on our experience of him. If God is our provider, that means it was our provider, is our provider, and will forever be our provider. And that's what God was teaching. Jesus was teaching them, hey, listen, one, I'm empowering you. Two, don't take anything because God's going to provide, and you're going to see it. 3, you're going to be surprised at the authority you actually have when you use it.
Oh yeah, and I forget where the passage is right off the top of my head, but God also talks, or Jesus talks about God providing for the birds of the air. And that's what came to my mind when I read that. I was like, I love that reference because you see birds all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you feel like you're not being provided for, just look around and realize like you have everything you need. You have everything you need. Maybe not everything you want all the time, but God does provide, and He calls us to step forward in faith in order for Him to do that.
Well, in this Sunday, we even define the difference of that, right? The difference between a want and a need. A want is something you desire. A need is a necessity. It's absolutely necessary. And in that same passage, so it's Matthew chapter 6, in that same passage, He says, hey, are you not more important than these?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Are you listening? Are you not more important than the birds of the sky? So the conclusion of this is, he goes, so they went out and preached that people should repent. And when they actually went and preached this message, this is what happened. They drove out many demons. They anointed many sick people with oil, and they healed them. Essentially, they did everything that Jesus said that they could do. We need to hear that. If the only reason that we don't share the gospel is we're afraid of the end result, listen, one, God has given you the authority. Again, the Great Commission, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. That's Jesus' statement. Therefore, so because I have authority, it's like go and preach the gospel, go and make disciples. And if you read the long version of Mark chapter 16, you'll see that in God accompanied them or partnered with them, like through miracles, acts, and wonders. You know what I mean? Same thing that happens right here. Jesus sends them out. This is the thesis. Let's sum it up. Jesus sends them out. He sends them out in pairs. He says, hey, you have authority. This is how I want you to respond. Don't take anything. You got to trust God, right? Yeah. But go preach the message, and see what happens. Yeah. I think many of us never make it to the see what happens stage.
Well, yeah.
If anything, we like the idea that God says, hey, here's the authority that I've given you, but some of us are too afraid to exercise it because we ask this question: what if He doesn't show up? You know what I mean? What if I go and do this and they reject the message? Awesome. If they reject the message, dust the feet off your ground and go share it again. It's not your responsibility. But what happens if God doesn't show up? My response to you would be, what happens if He does? You know what I mean?
That's good.
What if God does? Now, not only will somebody see the goodness of God, right? But you actually took a leap of faith and saw that God actually does hold true to His promises.
You do, and I mean, He tells us his word does not return void at all, ever. So there's been times for me where I feel like I've presented the gospel and nobody got anything out of it, right? And then a week later I hear there's been 3 or 4 decisions.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And then there's been times where I felt like the gospel was really awesome. I did a great job, and then there was nothing. So
yeah,
just use that for encouragement. Just walk in that, guys, because. This is our job. It doesn't matter what happens, but as long as you do your job and your part and your calling, that's what God's worried about.
Yeah. So here's some takeaways. One, if we want to partner in heaven invading earth, we got to show up. Just show up, right?
Yes.
Show up. Take a shot. You've been given authority that came from Jesus. So you need to recognize Jesus is the source of your authority. You're not the source of your own authority, right? So, and then go and deliver the gospel. If they say yes, they say yes. If they say no, then shake the dust off your feet. And lastly, just see what God does, right? Faith, we forget this, and we'll close with this promise. If uncertainty isn't present, neither is faith. If uncertainty isn't present, neither is faith. Because at that point, you're depending on your own logic. If risk isn't present, neither is faith. Right? You've got to trust God. You got to trust God that when I don't have food and Jesus tells me not to take any, that food will be provided, or money, or maybe another shirt, or whatever it is. But ultimately, if God tells you to go encourage somebody today, you got to trust that when that happens, God's going to show up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what faith is. Faith is trusting God in the moments of uncertainty, knowing that God is still God, and we believe that He's going to move.
Expecting Him to move. Yes.
Yeah, that's a big one. Expecting. Is there anything else you want to add?
Man, I think we covered it pretty good. I just want to encourage you guys. Don't get disheartened about the reactions of you presenting the gospel. Just go do it.
That's good.
Just go do it.
Hey, so that's it for this week's Bible study. We will pick back up next week in the next couple verses. Again, this is the reason why we do this. We want to grow together right where we are. We love you guys. Have an amazing week.
See you, church.
Well, hey, that is our Wednesday Bible study. We just want to thank you so much again for joining us. And if you want to join us every week, if you'll click subscribe, this podcast will pop up right there for you. Again, we want to do this to grow together right where we are.